Where the rubber meets the road, both metaphorically and literally on the farm, is of course in the tractor. That's where all the stuff we talk about on the show, from technology to agronomy to science and sustainability, that's where it all comes together.
When you imagine sitting in that cab, and I sit in that cab a lot, I've got my display right up here with all my technology data. I've got my controls, I can power my implements, I can power my tractor. This is truly where the technology and the implement and the tractor come together, and this is where the operator really manages those functions.
Joe Miller is a lifelong farmer and the global product and portfolio management lead for large and compact tractors at CNH. He gives us an inside look today at how they are constantly innovating on the Magnum series tractor, which has been a flagship of their brand for over 35 years now.
We've come to this solution, not just because we've had a bunch of engineers and product guys sitting in a room. We've had a lot of customers come in the room. These customers have molded the joystick, told us what kind of angle they like, where do they want the buttons, how do they want to naturally sit for long days in the field. That way they can focus on more mind-taxing and more challenging aspects of their operation.
A unique look at the farm's most essential tool, the tractor, on today's Future of Agriculture podcast. Hello, fellow Ag Nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture. My name is Tim Hamrich, and every week you and I get to hear from the founders, farmers, innovators, and investors shaping the future of the ag industry. Well, I want to take just a moment here to recognize our quarterly presenting sponsor for this quarter, which is Case IH. As most of you know by now, I'm fascinated by the way technology and innovation are shaping the future of agriculture, and that's why really I'm so excited to partner with Case IH. Case IH designs, engineers, and produces cutting-edge farm equipment based on a comprehensive understanding of farmers' needs, wants, and challenges, integrating these insights into their development and manufacturing. For example, take their model year 25 Magnum tractor. The new Magnum is purposefully designed to answer farmers' needs in every design and engineering choice. Improved horsepower for pulling heavier loads faster, bundled, integrated, and ready-to-go precision tech for greater accuracy in the field, and a transmission farmers can tweak for improved control and performance in different tasks. That kind of design thinking is exactly where the future of ag is headed, and that's why you'll be hearing me talk to the folks at Case IH today and at a few other points throughout this quarter about what they do and how they're working to push ag forward. Thanks again to Case IH for their leadership in ag innovation and for supporting the Future of Agriculture podcast. All right, now let's dive into today's episode, which features one of Case IH's flagship products, this Magnum tractor. We're talking with Joe Miller, Global Product and Portfolio Management Lead for CNH Large and Compact Tractors. And really, some context on this episode, so much of what we talk about regularly on this show over the course of 400 plus episodes comes together every year in the cab of a tractor, leveraging all of the technology to make the best possible decisions for that farm, management, agronomy, etc. And I really haven't spent a whole lot of time exploring the innovations surrounding the tractor itself. We take it for granted a little bit, but it really is the hub of the modern farming operation. The Magnum tractor has been a flagship of the Case IH brand since it debuted in 1987, and Joe does a great job today of talking about all of the work that goes into making this essential piece of equipment the very best it can be. So some quick background on Joe Miller. Joe grew up on a farm in Rochester, Indiana, and has always enjoyed working with equipment from a young age. This led to his current career with CNH, which has included roles in business management, new equipment sales, and parts and service sales. Joe has an MBA from the Indiana Kelley School of Business and a master's in Ag Econ from Purdue. I think a lot of you, especially those of you who tend to geek out over tractors, are really going to enjoy this episode. But I'll drop into the conversation here where Joe is describing some of the complexity behind bringing the best possible tractors to market.
People like to think about tractors as being easy. It's high horsepower and traction, and you hook the implement to the back and it goes and does all these things. But when you think about the complexity, we go everywhere from sugarcane to corn and soybean type farmings with planters and tillage. We're doing beet harvest and potato harvest, and we're also, into potatoes and sweet potatoes and really everything in between. So to really prioritize and focus where we're going to take the Magnum product to be able to hit every one of those applications takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time to prioritize where can we best provide the best solution for our customer. One other part of it that I would just kind of adding to that, it's not just the tractor by itself. We have to look at our suite of implements that are provided through Case IH, through the crop production team, through hay and forage and baling and applications like that, plus crop protection applications and strip till and so on. Find out what the needs of our complementary products are in terms of the implements and put those back into the tractor and make sure that the tractor is ready to handle all those tasks that are needed on the farm.
Right. And you are from a farm background as well, aren't you? I mean, so you kind of know firsthand what this looks like in practice.
Yeah, Tim, I am. I'm real fortunate in my career. I grew up on a farm in Indiana. That farm surrounds me on three sides of my house right now. And my dad and brother farm, it's been part of the family for generations. And we are a Case IH farm. We got two Magnums, a Steiger, two Case IH planters, the tillage. So we practice what we preach, right? But it's also important for me, the idea that just understanding the lens from a farmer, from a customer. Every customer issue we run into where a customer may be challenged, maybe something, maybe there's a repair needed, right? Something broke down. It always happens in season. There's something that's needed, or even there's a challenge when it comes to why did we design it this way? What could we be doing different here, right? Those are regular customer feedback points. From the lens that I've had growing up on a farm and living and working so close with my family farm, is that I can kind of personify that. I can take that and say, okay, I know how this would hit and impact my operation. What can I do to support operations across the world to make sure that we mitigate those as much as possible?
And as you look back, how have the needs of farmer customers changed in terms of what they need from an OEM like Case IH and what they need from this equipment? How is it different than maybe when you were growing up on the farm?
The reliance certainly on the technology and the total solution. As agronomic advancements have happened, both in the crops and the seeds and so on that the customers are using, there's a need there to be able to provide more data, to be more prescriptive, certainly doing whatever we can to manage customers' costs and keep them as low as possible on inputs. That was all there, in the 80s, 90s. The fundamentals haven't changed, but the technology integration has come leaps and bounds. So that's been one of the big changes that I've seen, not just in my career, but in the time I've spent on the farm as well as with the company. And I think that continues. I think it's really how do you make things as simple, seamless, and easy for an operator to take those agronomic data, all the agronomic data, all of the information that they have available, help them boil that down to the pieces that make the biggest impact and really allow them to be more productive and manage. I always say keeping the cost low on a per acre basis, as well as driving efficiency very high.
And if I'm, sitting down in my brand new Magnum series tractor, what do you like to share about it from your side of things to maybe a new customer to really help them understand what goes into that piece of equipment?
It's a great point. Some of the things are just the little features we point out that show that we spend a lot of time talking with the customers about this. For the Case IH Magnum tractor, we have our multifunction handle on the throttle and the shift lever. And what you'll notice when you sit in the tractor and you put your hand on it, your thumb naturally rests on your shift up, shift down button, as well as your shuttle. We have a whole bunch of programmable buttons that are located there, all within a button click. So as the operator is driving down the road, or if they're in the field doing something, naturally their right arm wants to sit right up against that multifunction handle, and it's real easy to use. Same thing goes when they're driving. We use a shuttle lever on the left-hand side. And sometimes people say, why do you do that? And I say, okay, well, I want you to look at the implement. I want you to get all comfortable, pretend, especially at farm shows, spend a lot of time talking with customers. Turn around the back, look, you're hooking up the implement. I said, okay, good. Now, lift your middle finger. And without question, they lift their middle finger, and right there on the left hand where they naturally have their hand fitting on the steering wheel is their forward reverse shuttle. We can do that on the right hand as well. We can do it on the left. But taking that time to say, look, we've come to this solution, not just because we've had a bunch of engineers and product guys sitting in a room. We've had a lot of customers come in the room. These customers have molded the joystick, told us what kind of angle they like, where do they want the buttons for their thumb, how do they want to naturally sit for long days in the field where they don't have to think about where the buttons and the controls are. They're just there. That way they can focus on more mind taxing and more challenging aspects of their operation, which is getting the crop, planted and getting the crop out of the field.
Right. And how do you think about success? Kind of when you ask yourself, well, how are we doing at that mission? Or, how are things going? What types of things do you look to kind of determine if you're on the right track or if you're making progress?
We spend a lot of time getting feedback from customers. Sometimes the tricky part is looking for those leading indicators that we're on the right path with our customers. We do that through our CDPD process. We call it customer driven product design. And so we're bringing customers in as we're working on new products, as we're working on improving our current products. It's always having that engagement with customers and getting the customer feedback continually. And you can tell when you're having a conversation with a farmer, a rancher, someone running a commercial land leveling business and so on, they can tell you, you can tell right away where they're satisfied with certain aspects of their operation. They'd like to see us do a little bit different things with our products, right? They'll even bring up questions. They'll bring up concerns. Sometimes it's some of the big ones, the macro things we're looking at right now are labor, right? That's always a big one. We're looking at how do we get more done in less time because the planting windows, the harvesting windows are changing. So all of those things come out through regular discussions. We take that back as a portfolio team, working with our engineering teams and working with the precision teams, the commercial sales guys, and say, what can we do to help head off these challenges, get in front of these issues that our customers are facing today and maybe will be growing tomorrow? And how do we provide the solutions that are really valuable add to the customer?
And how have the latest models of Magnum series tractors been able to kind of meet that increasing expectation?
Well, Tim, I'm a product guy, have been for a long time, and I'm a big fan of Magnum tractors. I appreciate you asking. One of the new features, we just came out with a new series of Magnum tractors. On the 355 model and the 405, we brought forward and enhanced a new feature called the APM2, or Advanced Productivity Management. Now, I can tell you, we've gone back on APM back to about 2010, where it's basically, it's kind of like a speed setting, kind of a cruise control to a degree. Customer would go into a field, they'd set their target speed, and then the tractor would work to provide the most fuel efficient solution, be it engine RPMs or gear and so on. We've taken that a step further. It really behaves a lot more like a cruise control. We made it much more intuitive to where you set your target speed, the tractor will adjust its engine RPM, it'll select its own gear and so on. You can put in certain like droop settings if you want it to pull down to a certain point on engine RPM. You could limit how far it pulls down that way for fan applications and so on. As well, you can shuttle, you can brake, you can press the clutch and engage. It doesn't kick you out here and there just because you had a manual input. It really goes from call it a gear and a speed-based type of management input to a speed-based. You're just selecting how fast you want the tractor to go, and you're trusting that tractor with the technology that it's got, as well as the command that's coming to it from the implement, to go out there and be as efficient as possible. And it's a really neat system. We've been working on it for the last couple of years, and very, very happy to see that out on the new Magnum tractors today.
Right. And it's a tall order for you all to try to meet this very specific needs of each of these farmers when you're looking at, integrated solutions. So, yeah, the product can be great and get better every year, but you've got to, find dynamic ways of coming up with solutions through the product plus, various other forms of equipment. Are there any areas where you think, okay, we're not fully solving the problem today, but I think that we will get there in the future? Anything come to mind on that?
Always. And if I looked at that and said, are there things that we could be doing better? Are there things that we could be doing more of? Do we need different configurations? Yes. What we have to look at is really a prioritization process. How do we, with all of the needs that are changing today, the needs that the customers are experiencing tomorrow, right? How do we try to prioritize what's going to hit the largest band? Maybe we talk about things in autonomy. I believe it was 2015 we launched our autonomous concept vehicle, which a lot of people on your podcast would remember because that was the Magnum tractor with no cab. Okay. And that tractor works and it did all of its things. It was planting double crop beans into a wheat field that year. And man, that was awesome, right? That was a concept into autonomy, going on 10 years ago. Autonomy has a lot of different applications that can fit, corn and bean operations. It can fit any sort of a broad acre or seed applications, things like that. So as we learn different things there, the prioritization comes back. How do we take a tool like that and spread it across multiple different applications? And how do we prioritize that? So the prioritization discussion, like anything else, is always it's always an opportunity to be the best, is to say, how can we impact the most customers in the biggest, most profound way to help drive the business forward? So sometimes you take major big moves like the autonomy discussion we saw earlier. And other times it's just a constant evolution in terms of maybe it's hydraulic flow, maybe it's making the levers just a little bit easier to get to where customers have to think less about those type of applications, or the APM, where you can program it a couple different ways, handful of different ways, frankly, that depending on your application you're doing, it's going to provide a value in cane or in beets or in row crop farming. That's kind of a cool way. We hit a lot of different applications with one stroke. So do we always look to do more and to do better and, bigger, faster, stronger? Absolutely. And I've got a whole list of things that customers have told me that they're looking for. We continue to build that into our plans and continue to execute in the best possible way.
Very cool. Very cool. You've been at this a long time and you're pretty aware of how these tractors are used, but I'm curious along the way, has there been any point where you've been surprised at a use for the tractor that you hadn't considered or you hadn't thought about?
I think the part that gets me, Tim, is the diversity of the applications in which they're in. I live in Indiana. I'm sitting here in Indiana right now, and if I see a Magnum tractor, it's on a tillage tool or it's on a corn planter. So in your mind's eye, when you picture a Magnum, sometimes if I catch myself doing interviews like this, talking about, just planting and tillage. But if you go to, Florida, Louisiana, and you're in sugarcane country, that's completely different. When you're in cotton country, now the spacings are different. One of the opportunities I've had going across the United States, what I think is really cool, is watching Magnums in sweet potato operations when they're transplanting sweet potatoes with a number of, a lot of times those sweet potatoes are actually planted or on a transplanter with human hands. You might get 12 to 16 to 24 people sitting on a transplanter as the tractor is going through the field, putting the sweet potatoes into the transplanter to be put into the application. That is really cool. Sometimes it kind of blows my mind just to see a tractor driving down a field with a row of people sitting on the back, planting live plants. That's just because it's different from where I sit in my lens of the world, right? But that's commonplace when you're down in parts of the Mississippi Delta or you're in North Carolina, things like that. So I would tell you, I think it's the diversity of the application never, ever ceases to amaze me. How they utilize Magnum, how they utilize high horsepower, how they utilize the hydraulics, how they utilize the precision farming components. It's so diverse from one end of the country to the other, east to west, north to south, doesn't matter. But it's really awesome to just see how that tractor can fit multiple different applications and allow customers to, it's another tool to help them be successful at what they do.
Makes sense. It seems like there's got to be a tension between optimal use for one customer and maintaining versatility for the majority of customers. And do you run into that tension quite a bit in your role as you're thinking through, what the next iterations of the Magnum series needs to be?
You do. You balance out the needs. There are some specific cases, and a lot of times that comes out into, spacing and tire needs and row spacing and things like that, because the rows of the different applications, they're hard to kind of come to mind, Tim, because over the years we've evolved, frankly, when you see the tractor to such a, it turns really, really tight, the row spacings, the hydraulic applications. There's a lot of applications, frankly, where we design to the extreme. And so as you design to the extreme, for most customers that are doing the more common jobs like planting and tillage and things like that, they're not going to bump into those limits, right? Because we've kind of designed them for those corner cases or those specific needs. And we've had those offerings available for guys that really need to push the envelope and what their needs are. And that's kind of been a hallmark of the Magnum tractor, is to say, that's an important piece of what it does. It's an important piece of what it's done since 1987. It's just continued to evolve, grow, and expand as the producer's needs have evolved, grown, and expanded as well.
And for that integrated solution, it would seem to me that the tractor would be at the center of it. I'm just curious, what does that look like in practice to really make sure you're thinking about this and, coming at this from an integrated approach?
I use the word, Tim, from integration, it's communication. And sometimes that seems like it's an oversimplification, but I like to keep things simple where we can. When you talk about communication, I like to use the reference point that we talk about the tractor plus the technology plus the implement. It's tractor plus tech plus implement. And we talk through that an awful lot. Where the Magnum tractor is really critical, we look at from especially like the North American farms and the arable farming, row crop farming. Inside that Magnum cab, that's where that customer is going to interact with the technology. They're going to interact with the implement. They're going to interact with getting the horsepower and the fuel efficiency and some of the most critical applications. For a lot of people, I can't really think of one that's not, but the planting application is the most critical and the most important. And when we talk about the critical nature of that one application, It's not just the tractor doing it. It's not just the planner doing it. It's not just the technology from a mapping perspective and layering and so on. So we have to work together, and we have to make sure that we are coordinating the best we can about what solutions our customers need, what solutions that they're talking about for their future needs, to make sure that we're always one step ahead and ready to deliver on whatever it is our customers need in those critical applications and critical moments.
So we talked a lot about, understanding the customer needs, innovating, kind of figuring out where the market is headed, but not a lot about the really important part of manufacturing. So can you just talk about the process of getting the Magnum tractors manufactured?
Sure. Magnum tractors for the North American market are built in Racine, Wisconsin. That's kind of been home of the J.I. Case Company for 175 years, I think, right? It's been a long time. And then we have a couple different plants globally that also build Magnum tractors, depending on the regions that we're at. So when we talk about going back in that CDPD process, right, it's understanding what the customers want and understanding then what kind of all the collective needs are. And then we have to start going back and say, okay, how do we design the tractor to meet those needs? And then there's also a piece of it, how do we design it for manufacturability? How do we design processes into the plant that make sure that quality is hit at every single step, that delivery is hit at every single step, to the point when the tractor comes off the line, it's that legendary Magnum product that customers have known to expect since 1987. So we talk about manufacturing and building for manufacturability. It's building a process that allows the parts to come together, that we're testing it at each stage of the line, that we're testing it at key critical components along the line, to make sure that by the time we get that finished good, it's rolling off the line and hungry to start gobbling acres once it gets out to the customer's farm.
And have there been changes? I mean, I'm sure in 175 years there have been changes, but I mean, in recent years, as far as innovations in manufacturing that have helped that process to maintain that high level of quality?
Yeah, there is. And one of them that I'll highlight is we like to talk about a process that's kind of like a no fault forward, right? That there's no issues at all. So if you're putting two pizzas together, if you're putting a part on a larger assembly, that goes the way it's intended to go, right? And you can't move from that process as an operator on the line until that process is complete. One of the cool things that we've been able to utilize technology for is that when you're in the Racine manufacturing operations, and people can request tours. We have tours going 5 days a week in Racine, so it's really kind of a cool experience. But torque wrenches. So we have a torque wrench, and it's connected more or less via Bluetooth to the display. So it'll tell the operator on a big computer screen here, you got to put this part onto this piece, and it's got to be a certain torque. When the operator pulls the torque wrench and achieves the correct torque, that's when the system creates a check mark and moves forward. So that way they can move on to the next part of the process. If they tighten it, as an example, but maybe it doesn't get to the desired torque, maybe the wrench wasn't right or there's something out of calibration, it didn't work, right? It doesn't. You don't move forward in the process. It stays where it's at until you're able to go back and correct the actual torque. That's built across the line in a lot of different functional areas. So it's very important to understand, like, as we've made changes in the Racine plant, as we've made changes in the processes for Magnum, we've been able to really streamline the process and help realize the quality at every single step.
Very cool. Very cool. What comes to mind when you pull out the crystal ball about where this all goes in the future? The future Magnum Series tractors, how will they look different in your speculation as we're sitting here today?
That's a hard one to answer. The way I'll probably answer it to you is by going back on what it's been. What I'm looking at behind your face on my wall is a picture of it's a Farmall M, and it kind of evolves through a series of ice tractors to a MX270. So as a traditional leadership from 2000, I got that poster sitting on my desktop. I look at it all the time, right? What is common between a Farmall M and a Magnum 355? And when we think about that, people are going to say, obviously, it's the red paint. There's more than that, right? It's the need for the customers to be able to rely on a product that is built with high quality, with the best available technology for the day, right? For where we're at. As technology continues to advance, as customer needs and experiences, and what their needs and the implements and so on continues to advance, the Magnum tractor is going to continue to evolve to be, on their farm and be as reliable and as important as that Farmall M was, or that 1086, or that 7130, right? I can go through a series MX305. When you look at the evolution of what the high horsepower two-wheel drive tractor has been for Case IH, it's consistently, it's reliability, it's simplicity, its ruggedness, and its ability to handle a lot of different applications. So where does Magnum go from here? I've got some ideas. I won't conjecture into where I think that's going to go, but I can promise you that it's going to continue to go back on those same key features that have made the M's and the 1066s and the MX 335s and the Magnum 340s is important to farmers. That's where we're going, right? That's a key aspect of what we're trying to do.
Well, you've certainly alluded to this throughout our entire interview, but I would love to get one answer from you where you address it directly. Can you just try to sum up the importance of the Magnum tractor to Case IH and to your own farm, but also to farmers that you interact with daily, just the importance of this particular product?
Tim, when I'm presenting to leadership and I'm presenting to anybody about Magnum tractors, one of my favorite slides, and I'm not a big one on PowerPoint, so for me to say I have a favorite slide is saying something. But my favorite slides, it shows a picture of inside of a Magnum cab, like you're sitting in the seat and you're looking at the Pro 1200 display and armrest and out the visibility of the front hood, right? And it's sitting in a cornfield with, I'm going to say, probably 8-inch tall corn, so that you can see the rows, right? And what I always showcase everybody that'll listen, I said, this is the most important part of a Magnum tractor. And I said, it's this piece right here. When you imagine sitting in that cab, and I sit in that cab a lot, right? I've got my display right up here with all my technology data. I've got my controls. I can power my implements. I can power my tractor. This is truly where the technology and the implement and the tractor come together. And this is where the operator really manages those functions. It all comes together in the cab of a Magnum tractor. And that's been a unique key feature of the high horsepower two-wheel drive tractor, especially in the North American market and parts of the Western European market and Latin American market, Australian market. And it holds true today that the Magnum tractor, that's where the operator interacts with the implements and the technology on their most critical applications. And that's what sets it apart. To me, that's the key driver in everything we do is when I'm sitting in that seat, I'm controlling my operation, right? That's where I'm making, the on-the-fly decisions. Surely there's planning and other stuff, but man, that's where the rubber hits the road is right there with all of those pieces together.
Well put. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, the tractor being at the center of all those things and the explosion in digital tools we've seen in agriculture in the last, decade or so, how have you all had to account for that or adjust to that? The various offerings that I'm sure all want to kind of plug into this hub of the tractor on the farm.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work with some of the ISO and some of the I'm going to call it more. There's standards that we would apply, and we're compliant there, and that works. Coming back to the customer piece of it, though, it's like, what can the customer? Why is this important to the operator? Why is this important to the customer? And that's where it's really important. We just launched this year earlier, Field Ops. It's a mobile app where you can manage your fleet, remotely. I talk about the cab being the most important part of the tractor, where you're interacting with tech and iron and all that. But also, if you're running a fleet, I can manage so much of that fleet through my smartphone, through my tablet, or on my desktop. So when we talk about this, the digital pieces of it have made it so valuable for customers to manage remotely, customers to be able to manage more efficiently, more productively, input, export some of the key needs they have on agronomic data and key prescriptions and key missions, as well as for dealer support. If a customer has an issue, he calls in and says, hey, I got a problem. Dealer can pull up with the customer's consent and all that done, but he can pull up right there on the display. I know right where you're at. I can see the tractor. Can we share some of the data back and forth between the display and the dealership to allow them to have a much better idea of what's needed when they go out to support the customer? Again, this all comes back to maximizing uptime and making sure that our customers are able to get as much done as they can during those tight windows.
Well, I didn't bring this up, and maybe I should have, or maybe not. So you can choose, we can go there or we can not go there. You just tell me, it's fine. But I'm sure you get asked about it a lot, which is right to repair. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, and specifically those people who have it top of mind or a big concern, how you all are approaching that?
Sure. I don't mind talking a little bit about right to repair. I'll tell you, a couple of years ago was when I was in one of my roles within Case IH. I was a little more involved with it than I maybe am today. But the one area that I always looked at from right to repair and how Case IH was certainly approaching it was we support that our customers have a choice on, getting their equipment repaired and how they would want to have that done. And I always like the term, the right to repair, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have the ability to modify. A lot of work has gone into these tractors, especially on things like software and emissions compliance and so on to make sure that we are delivering the peak efficiencies and the peak power and the peak performance for our customers. And so we want to make sure that the customers, if they have a repair that they want done or need to be done, we would recommend factory trained technicians from the dealerships coming out and taking a look. These guys have gone to a lot of service school. They have the right tools. They can repair that tractor very, very quickly. But when it comes to right to repair, we understand customers want to have some of those experiences. And Case IH is supportive of that. We have tools available for that. It's just the repair is one thing. And sometimes the request to make significant modifications to the tractor that maybe haven't gone through all the engineering tests to make sure that we don't run into a problem where, it's modified beyond its intent and now it's not delivered to the customer's expectations. That's the stuff that I think we just want to be mindful of when we're talking right to repair.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Well, in your mind, what haven't we got to? Critical stories or information about the Magnum tractor, anything you were hoping to share today that we haven't talked about yet?
Tim, I think we've gotten to, a lot of the stuff that's on my list. I appreciate having the conversation and talking about Magnums. I mean, this is a cornerstone of the Case IH business. The Magnum is, we like to call it a flagship product. It's been a critical part of our business since 1987. And I love talking about the products. I want to encourage any of your listeners, if you're in the Racine, Wisconsin area, to swing by the plant, see what the guys are doing there as they build these tractors. There's a nice innovation center that kind of shows the walk from the start of the evolution of Magnum. So we have JI Case tractors, International Harvester tractors, some of those, the autonomous concept vehicle, and then you go out and you experience how we're building the current tractors today. I think that your listeners would love to come in and see it. We'd love to have you. I'm up there a fair amount. I spend a lot of time at the Racine plants, and I'm still always excited to walk in and see all the stuff we're doing.
Wow. I was just in Milwaukee, and I wish I would have scheduled an extra day to go down there because that would have been awesome.
Yeah. Now, we'd love to have you. If you ever come back, it's there's a whole crew there that they do a really good job. A lot of the people that are leading the tours are retirees from the Racine area and some really great high horsepower tractor guys that have been with Magnum from the very beginning, and I think that do a fantastic job.
All right. Well, I am adding a visit to that Racine plant to my future plans. I love going to Wisconsin just in general anyway, but that sounds really cool. And also some of those guys that give the tours probably would make great future podcast guests as well. But anyway, that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much to Joe Miller for being on the show. I know a lot of you love to geek out about tractors, so you'll be happy to hear I'm putting together a few other segments on tractor innovations that I'll be releasing periodically throughout this quarter. So I hope you'll subscribe or follow, and just in general, stay tuned for that. Thank you very much to Case IH for being my quarterly presenting sponsor this quarter. You can learn more about the latest Magnum tractor and all of the various other products they offer at their website, caseih.com. Link will be, of course, in the show notes. Last but never least, thank you for your time and your attention. I do not take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.